My name is Drew Waldron, and I'm on with best-selling author and futurist Heather McGowan. Heather, it's great to see you.
Hey there, thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So your career is so diverse and eclectic, from being an author to an innovative designer, a keynote speaker, with all those different hats. How do you introduce yourself and your career to people meeting you for the first time?
Well, I borrow from Steve Jobs and I say that the dots would never make sense if I connected them forward. They only make sense when I look backward at it. So, what I've realized is that across my career, which started out in industrial design, product design, design strategy, design thinking, management consulting, MBA, art school before that, and boutique investment banking, academia, building a new curriculum and a new college to entirely focus a workforce for the future of work. I didn't have those words for it then. That integrated 18 different undergraduate majors around design, engineering, and business. So a lot of focus on innovation. And then a lot of consulting work in white space exploration, which is basically how do you propose a product or service that no customer ever asked for, which is really some of our best breakthrough innovation. Also, Steve Jobs said it isn't the customer's job to tell you what they want. So across those things, one of the things that I realized is that we weren't preparing the workforce that we needed. So on the supply side, from my work in across several academic institutions, and we weren't also seeking the workforce we needed. So people who are doing some of this space exploration, which is a lot of the work we're going to be doing going forward, didn't know how to hire for these skills, didn't know how to nurture these skills, didn't know how to create the workforce that they needed once they got them out of education. So what I say to folks is I found myself working on the supply and the demand side of talent, and the majority of time I was just explaining to people, this is how work is changing. And finally, I stumbled on the concept of future work. I'm like, that's what it is. Future work is continuous. It'll always be. It's not a moment in time. It's been throughout human history. We're in our fifth era. We're in the augmented era now. We're coming out of the information era. And I help people understand where we've been, where we are, where we're going, so they know what it means to them and they can take action.
And you used two terms there that I want to clarify. You said that we're coming out of the information era and into
Mhm.
the augmented era. What do you mean by that?
So the first era was the hunter-gatherer era, and that was about 200,000 years, and then it was the agricultural era, which was tens of thousands of years, and then the industrial era, then the information era, now the augmented era. And the information era is about 75 years. And if you look at life expectancy, we had one, maybe two generations to absorb the change of being in the information era. That's digital technologies, the internet, cloud computing, etc. Now we're in the augmented era, which is the AI era, where we have pervasive computing, we're always connected, and we have technologies doing things independent of human actors and augmenting human capabilities. And so we need folks to move from kind of the simplest way I say it is in the information era, we had to learn the tool in order to use it. In the augmented era, we're going to learn with and from the tool. So we're going to learn alongside a technological agent.
Very good distinction. And I'm glad that you brought up your AI topics because we're about 2 years or so into what many people are calling the AI boom. And
Hmm.
there's useful AI integration that's making many people's lives easier, but there's a
Hmm.
lot of artificial hype around AI integration that add value. So, how do you discern what's actually useful and what's hype?
Yeah, so if you look at the Gartner hype cycle, which not every technology has gone through, we're probably at the peak or coming out of the peak of it. I think we've been a little bit lazy when it comes to AI, frankly, because we have had most of our conversations around what will it replace and who will it displace. Now, we have to be mindful of those things so we can help people adapt. But if AI only does everything that we do today, it would be, in my view, a complete and utter failure. What it should be is enhancing our capabilities. So what we need to be mindful of is where are we using AI to automate something? Because when we automate something, humans atrophy. Look at your handwriting. Is it as good as it was a couple decades ago? Look at your ability to remember phone numbers. Look at your ability to, orient without GPS. So when we hand things off to technology, we atrophy, and we're seeing that happen pretty quickly around large language models. When organizations put them into practice in work, people's performance improves with them, but then once that tool is removed, they drop below the baseline they were at before. So we have to be very mindful of it. So in terms of the hype, I think we've focused on it taking place of humans, which I understand that increases efficiency, but we ought to set our sights farther out on the horizon. Where will it unleash potential? Where will it help us learn and adapt? Where will it increase our cognitive velocity? So not just the speed of our thinking, but the depth of our thinking. So we don't become lazier by it, but we will become enhanced for it. So there is a fair amount of hype out there. It's not going to replace everything that humans do. Humans still have a very important place, but humans have to figure out mindfully how to adapt to this.
Well, that's good to hear. That's not going to replace all of us, and I'm sure that the teams that you work with are very happy to hear that. All the corporate teams that you do work with, what do you find is the most common advice that you're giving to the corporate teams that book you?
It's a message of hope because I think that we've got a lot of negative messages out there. We're very highly polarized around, social and political issues in a way that I don't think is productive and in fact inhibits collaboration. So sometimes I talk about that, not politics. Nobody ever wants to talk about politics, but how we got here and why we're not connecting in the same way. We are social beings. We run on connection. We've got isolation issues that's making it harder for us to trust, essential for collaboration. So my greatest message to folks is one of hope. Gallup did a survey that came out, I think it was in the last week or two, that said the number one thing people are looking for from their leaders is hope. So I paint a picture of, this is where we are, this is where we're going, this is what we need to do together. And people consistently say after I've left, I didn't see it that way before. I understand now what it means to me. I feel more hopeful. I feel more agency. I know how to lead. I know how to perform in my organizations. And I'm excited about this. So that's my biggest message is one of hope.
And if you were a corporate leader that had to inject some hope into their team, what
Mhm.
do you think is the first thing you would do?
I say that there are 5 M's that people are looking for from work. First is money. We work for money. We work for economic security. It's table stakes. So people need to be paid fairly. First M is money. Second is mission. People are looking to be part of something larger than themselves. People are looking for organizations where they feel like they're making an impact in the world. So mission. Next is meaningful work. People want to do something that contributes to that mission. So I feel like my own contributions are towards that bigger mission. I'm making an impact on the world. Then it's mentorship because people know that it's as important to learn as to earn. Because when you learn, it makes you more valuable tomorrow than you were today. And Gen Z is particularly aware of that, and they're looking for those mentorship opportunities. And then finally, it's membership. It's being part of something. It's belonging somewhere. So those are the 5 M's: money, mission, mentorship, meaningful work, and membership.
I'm glad that you brought up Gen Z because it seems like a lot of business leaders are looking for advice as to how to deal with that generation. I'd say that maybe half of us have entered the workforce, the other half of us are in college or just before college. What advice do you have, not for business leaders, but for young people entering the workforce today?
Yeah, you have to realize that the experiences of Gen Z, which I recently heard somebody suggest we call it Gen C, because you're the Gen Z generation may be more defined by COVID than anything else. It interrupted their education, it interrupted their entry into the workforce. It defined them in so many different ways because it has shifted work in a lot of ways, but it's also shifted all over human relationships. So I think the first thing to understand is that you're going to be working with and for people who had very different experiences from you. They are not true digital natives, where I think you are the first really true digital native population. They traded loyalty for security. That was the work promise for them. So they might have some allegiance to the organization that you work for that feels unfamiliar to you because you knew that loyalty for security wasn't a promise that was going to be true for you. You're looking for other things for work. You're looking for that mentorship, you're looking for that mission. You have always worked in a fairly asynchronous way through text messages and social media. So we're very fluid with those kinds of communications. You probably haven't worked as much in person and with your in-person socialization skills. That probably does need some work, especially because of COVID. So seek mentors. And I would say when you're looking for your first job, don't look for your first job, look for your first boss. Your first boss is going to shape your life. That is the person who's going to be your mentor, who's going to help you navigate. Because whatever the first job is, it's fairly irrelevant what the skills are in it. It's more important to develop those relationships and that mentoring.
Very well said. Heather, in a world so pessimistic, the last question I want to ask you is what are you optimistic about?
I am optimistic about humans. I was at an event yesterday in Miami. I was walking through the airport and I noticed off in the distance, not right in front of me, but a little bit off in the distance, an elderly woman had fallen down. And we're living in a world that's so cynical right now. When I asked friends of mine that I saw at a pub last night, what do you think happened? And they all said everybody stepped around her, everybody walked away. I said, absolutely not. Everybody went over and tried to help her out. I am so optimistic about humans. We are hardwired to be connected, and we're disconnected right now. We have so much more in common than we have in difference, and we are oriented to help each other. And there's no better explanation than at a busy airport where everybody stopped, no matter how close they were to their gate, and wanted to take off to try to help this woman up. And I think that is kind of what's hardwired for most of us. We are mostly good. I say the majority of us are really good people who want to make a better world, a better community, a better neighborhood, and they want to help that person who fell on the ground. So,
Optimistic about humanity. Well, that is
yeah,
going to
I'd say I'm a belligerent optimist.
that's fantastic. That's a good way to live life. That is going to conclude our conversation with Heather McGowan. Heather, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much for having me.